Hey, y'all, welcome back to another episode of the DIY Homebuyer Podcast. Since launching this podcast, I have loved all of the amazing people I've gotten to meet. And I think because I've been working in this consumer advocacy space, I've been drawn to people who are also doing good things for consumers, seeing opportunities to create new businesses to help people and solve real world problems. And that's exactly what connected my guest and I today. Andy Rouhafzai, he is the owner, founder of Insurance Claim Hero. And I know for many people, myself included, you kind of hear the word insurance, it's like your eyes glaze over and you might even be like, all right, skipping this one, on to the next. But don't do that, because what Andy is doing is really incredible. He is actually going to bat for homeowners against insurance companies when they try and deny your claim. So this is literally an episode that could save you hundreds of thousands of dollars. God forbid you have an issue with your house. He's going to make sure that up front you have the categories of knowing what kind of coverage you need and what to do if an insurance company tries to give you a hard time about your claim. So that's a mouthful. Andy, I am so glad you're here, man. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me, Nick. I'm pumped to be here. I actually, I love talking about insurance. My wife is tired of hearing about me talk about insurance. So this is a great opportunity for me to get some of it out of my system without having to bore my wife anymore. Because to your point, it is an incredibly boring topic that nobody really cares about until it's too late.
So much of life, I feel like, is that way. And honestly, to the point of boring a spouse to tears, that is the main reason why I had to start a podcast, is because my wife was like, you need somebody else to talk to about your DIY homebuyer stuff. I can't spend another date listening to this. So we're in good company, man. But yeah, let's talk about, first of all, how did you even get into this whole business of helping homeowners fight for when an insurance company denies their claim? Did you have a bad experience, or where did you come across this opportunity?
Yeah. Actually, December of 2022, the pipes in my house burst while I was traveling. So I had copper pipes in the house. I was out of town for Christmas. About 7,000 gallons, like a medium-sized swimming pool, poured out over 3 days in my house while I was out of town. The insurance company comes out, and that's usually the first call you make, right? You call your insurance company, like, hey, I got water in my house. They send somebody out. They offer me $20,000. By the time they actually came out, I already was sitting on estimates for $500,000. I knew that $20,000 wasn't going to be even a drop in the bucket. And then they make it really, 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 really hard to get the money after that. And luckily, I'm like that weird guy that gets a credit card and I read all the fine print and I make sure that I kind of understand what are the little fine print nuances. And so I started getting obsessed. It's a lot of money, right? And we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars for my property. So I said, hey, this is a good use of my time. So I start obsessing over what does the policy say? At the end of the day, the insurance policy is just a contract that they wrote and we sign. And then I said, well, hey, there's also laws in Texas and there's laws in every state about how insurance policies and what obligations insurance companies have. And I got just ridiculously obsessed. And then I started thinking, well, if they do this to me, and I'm kind of like a with it kind of guy, what are they doing to everybody else? And I'm half Colombian, so I'm like, what are they doing to the Hispanic community? I speak Spanish, and I'm thinking about my mom. She's 70. I'm like, what do they do if you're Latino and you call in, you don't speak English, or you don't know how to check your email? And that's kind of how it all started. Was I was trying to be a pain in the ass for the insurance company, and I was also trying to raise awareness, public awareness about how to actually navigate the complexities of an insurance claim.
I mean, so I love, I think the best businesses are born out of that, desire to see a positive change in the world and are driven by that mission of, wow, people are getting screwed. I've experienced that, but I also have these traits and skills where I can actually go forward and solve that. So I love that that you actually have taken action and built something. Just in case anybody missed it, when the insurance company first came out, they told you that they would give you $20,000 for the damage of a medium-sized swimming pool that got poured out in your house, essentially.
They told me $20,000. And by the way, so Texas, you got bigger houses. So I have a 4,000 square foot house. The entire downstairs of my house soaking wet. And now I tell people water is actually like trickier to deal with in your house than fire sometimes, because fire is pretty obvious. You're like, my house burned down. There's no arguing that the house burned down. Water is a lot more subjectivity, right? Some things can be dried, some things can't, but then there's mold and insurance won't pay for mold. So water actually can be one of the most confusing like insurance claims to handle. And I would say that's probably actually at least from an insurance claim handling process, it's harder. Like I'll take a fire claim any day over, like water is much harder to navigate.
Yeah. No, I've worked in the new construction industry. And so seeing homes as they're being built and seeing the water lines that run all throughout our house. And now with the fire sprinkler systems that are becoming a lot more standardized, you just think of like, there are so many opportunities for something to go wrong behind these walls and for it to take months, sometimes even years to figure out a slow leak that then causes mold and rot and God knows how many thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in damage. So before we kind of get into like more general principles when it comes to like coverage and how to fight these claims, I do want to hear just how your story resolved. So you did the deep dive and got into the fine print, got into what your legal rights were with the state of Texas. What happened in your journey? Did you have to settle at the $20,000 check, or did you get them to cover more?
No, so actually it's literally still ongoing. About 2.5 years later, I'm about to probably end up around $850,000 total. There's a lot of other buckets of coverage. So, I mean, obviously there's water mitigation. You got to get the mold out. That was a lot of money. Then you got to rebuild the house. That was a lot of money. But then I can't live in the house, so I have to live elsewhere for 2 years. That I was, $7,000 a month in rent. That was a lot of money. And then, you have, all the stuff inside the house. And my wife likes high-end like furniture and all this stuff. And I had like nice gym equipment. That was a lot of money. So when you add it all up together, but I always tell people like getting money on a complex insurance claim, it's like it was squeezing blood from a stone. I mean, I think it was over 30 checks over 2 years to get where I'm at now. But I mean, when it's all said and done, I'm actually finally back in my house now. So I'm still, until the next check comes in, which I'm still fighting for. I should end up right where I need to be. But and the nice thing is Texas though has laws about interest when they do things like this. So I'm actually getting a decent chunk of change in interest because of the delay in the payments. Because, we live in a hyperinflationary environment. Every day that they don't pay you your money, you're actually losing money.
Right. Yeah, you're giving
like
them
you put the money in the bank
account
accounts
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, I mean, if I owed you $1 million, and every day is it adds up very quickly in terms of how much money that interest accrues. Especially 2 years ago, we were seeing 5% interest. We were seeing some good interest rates on the high yield savings accounts.
Yeah, man. Well, I want to kind of talk through, if you were in the process of buying a home, which is where most of the listeners to this podcast are at, for many of them, like myself included, like when I had to go shopping insurance, I had a mortgage. So that was piece of it. My lender had to have a policy to give to them. And I just went to like a standard insurance broker and was just like, hey, just get me the best price. And I think I ended up with Allstate. And I didn't do a deep dive on what my coverages were. I just kind of took their word from it, which is, I think, what most people probably do. And so as you think of home buyers, like what are the big things that they should be paying attention to when shopping insurance so that they don't end up in a crappy situation?
Yeah, I would definitely say the first thing is don't just go for the cheapest policy. The first thing I would look at is there's two types of policies. There's one called an open perils versus a named perils policy. And I'll say this, open perils means they cover everything except the stuff that they list out as exclusions, aka the stuff that they say they don't cover, right? So open perils means we cover anything that happens to your house except for these 10 things, and it could be earthquake, could be flood, it could be terrorism, yada, yada, yada. Named perils is the exact opposite. It means we don't cover anything unless it's one of these 7 things on the list. And so people don't read that, and that's a huge one. I've had a lot of people that have come to me with policies, and there's nothing you can really do about it. You bought a bad policy. But let's say you're going with like a standard broker that's not selling a horrible policy like a named perils policy. What I typically tell people to do is for the house itself, I would probably increase your coverage on the house by 10, 20%, whatever the broker is selling you, because here's what happened to me. I had about $500,000 in coverage for my house, but after you get the water out, you mitigate the damage, you dry the house, that comes out of the same bucket for the rebuild. I almost ran out of money because I had builders that wanted to charge me $400,000 or $500,000 to build my house, but I had already spent over $100,000 just drying the house out, ripping the house out, preventing mold in the house. So I would increase so there's three main buckets of coverage under a standard policy. You have the house that's protected, it's the dwelling coverage. You have the personal property, aka the stuff inside the house, your furniture, your clothes, your gadgets, your computer, all that. And then you have additional living expense coverage, or some will call it loss of use, which is if your house burns down, you got to live somewhere else. Are they going to pay? So I would increase your dwelling coverage. And then the insurance brokers always use they almost usually just try to sell you 30% of your house's value for your personal property. For me, that ended up being $300,000. I don't have $300,000 worth of furniture and clothes in my house. You can probably decrease your personal property coverage. Unless you have really expensive stuff, you don't even if you do you really have $200,000 to $300,000 worth of clothes and furniture? Probably an average person, especially, probably not, right? And then the most important one in my book is your living expenses. Like if your house burns down, most carriers will only sell you 1 year of living expense coverage and a pretty low amount. But if your house burns down and it takes you 2 years like it took me to navigate your insurance claim, you're going to be paying money out of your pocket to live elsewhere while still paying down your mortgage. I will also say that increasing your living expense coverage raises your premium negligibly. So I would really juice your living, and everybody lives differently, right? So, I mean, I kind of got like a bougie lifestyle. So, I wanted like a 4,000 square foot house with a swimming pool and a lot for the dogs. But just figure, hey, if you rented an Airbnbs are expensive. You had to live somewhere. If your house burned down, you had to live in an Airbnb and it was $5,000 to $10,000 a month. Do you have enough? I would always budget for 2 years of bucket for the living expense coverage.
Well, this is gold. Like we could stop the recording right here, and it's like just in those categories that you've created. That's immensely helpful. And just to summarize, so you have those three buckets. The dwelling, that's where you recommend increasing the policy there. Your personal property, like 10 to 20% kind of deal for the dwelling. And because, like you said, it's not just the cost to rebuild. Like there's also probably some demolition costs if they got to bring the house down, and that's all coming from the same bucket. The personal property can tend to be overwritten. So bringing that down or having a more realistic assessment of how much your personal property is. And then that's huge, like that loss of use coverage, how you're going to pay for your dwelling, where you're going to be staying and having extra buffer there. I can't think of anything really worse than you can't live in your home. You're still having to pay the mortgage, and now you're having to pay essentially double rent while you're trying to live somewhere like that. That would be a nightmare sort of situation.
And that happened to me. I ended up losing about $30,000 to $40,000. I can't even blame my insurance company. I miscalculated. I ran out of money. The process took longer because there was also city permits. I mean, everything just delays you a whole home rebuild. So I lost 30 to 40 grand out of my pocket, bouncing around Airbnbs, moving around houses, and paying out of my own pocket to live elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some of the games that you see insurance companies play when it comes time to making a claim? Like I know for a lot of people, like the big one is like roof. We're going to have, whether it's a hailstorm or a windstorm or what, I mean, roofs take a hell of a beating. And, but just when you got to make a claim, What are the issues that you commonly see people run into?
The biggest one, and I will say this until I'm blue in the face, I will blast this on socials, is they try to get everything to you over the phone or in person. They don't put anything in writing. And that's the number one mistake. Like I said, I'll say it 10 times right now, because that's the number one mistake I see every time I get a claim across my desk is the adjuster said this, the insurance company promised this. And I'm like, well, do you have it in an email? Do you have it in a letter? Do you have it in writing? Nope, 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 nope. I was like, well, did you record the calls? No. Okay, so you got a he said, she said situation, and that's why you're calling me, because they're not actually following through with whatever it is that they've told you. So rule number one is always get it in writing. Now, you can still have phone calls, but if you have a phone call, send a follow-up summary email. Dear adjuster, thanks for the time on the phone. To summarize, we spoke on March 31st, and we discussed topics A, B, and C, and you agreed to this, and I said this. Get it in writing. The next one that I see a lot of is, I call them like shadow denials, or like weird way, like soft no's. Most states have laws surrounding what happens when an insurance company denies your claim or part of a claim. And the reality is, most of the time, the insurance company isn't denying the entire claim. They're denying portions of your claim. And what they'll do, instead of issuing a denial, they'll say, I don't think that would be approved, or I don't think my management would approve that. They're not actually denying it. So this actually segues, though, into get it in writing. If you ask for $1 and they say no, then ask for a formal denial letter in writing. Most states have laws that require them, upon your request, to issue a formal denial letter. That one tactic, when I did that on my own claim, every time I would say, actually, I'll give you a small example. On my claim, they're supposed to pay for the additional living expenses, which isn't only rent. It's because the house that we rented was further away than the house that I live in now. So I was like, hey, Costco is further away. This store is further away. My friends' houses are further away. I'm now spending more money on mileage, and Texas is pretty big. I said, I need mileage for Costco. I need mileage for this. They said, no, I don't. That would not be allowed to be paid. And then I said, okay, give me a denial letter. 2 weeks later, they're like, we have approved it. Here's your $550 a month for mileage. And that worked like on 10 different battles. You want to deny it? Great. That's your position, but put pen to paper. Show me where in the policy it says that you won't pay this, or show me where it says in the law. Otherwise, you better pay. I mean, this is that's just how it works, right? If it's not in the policy, it's not in the law, and you have no good reason to deny it, then you better just pay.
I'm just, as I'm thinking through, I'm like, man, you're like the worst nightmare for most insurance companies. Hey.
I like to give them a lot of work too, because the thing is that they'll also, dude, you should see the denial letters that I see. It'll be like, we are denying your claim because of this section in your policy that says, and then they'll just copy and paste like 3 pages of your policy that nobody reads because it's weirdly formatted in weird words. I always tell people the word adjuster and supplement and depreciation, they use these weird words. Why is it an adjuster? What are they adjusting? I'm like, this is a loss valuation, a loss consultant. I don't know. They use these weird words, confusing terminology to confuse the insured for the entire process and to make you seem like you're out of your wheelhouse. At least here in Texas, I have laws where they can't just say a denial letter is, we're denying your claim because of this language. They have to also include the logic. How does my particular claim, how is it relevant to that language in the policy? So I ask them to rewrite the denial letter too if it's not compliant with the law. I'm like, there's no logic here. You can't just deny something because of something without explaining how that language is relevant to my situation.
Yeah. I love it, man. Holding the fire to their feet. And, we probably should have done this earlier, but the nature of how conversations go. The term public adjuster, I think we really only hear that, or the idea of an adjuster, really only hear that in this limited context of insurance. But I think I wouldn't be surprised if there's some listener that's just like, okay, what is an adjuster? What do they do? And so maybe you can give just a quick definition there.
Yeah, so nobody knows what the hell an adjuster is. There's 3. I think of this show, that movie, The Adjustment Bureau. That's where my head goes.
Yeah.
But anyways, there's 3 types of adjusters, right? You've got the adjusters that work for the insurance company. They might work for Allstate, or they work for State Farm, Farmers, whatever. And then most adjusters are actually called independent adjusters. I hate that term because it gives the word independent makes you think that they are not employed by the insurance company. Their paychecks, though, are paid for by the insurance company. The only reason that independent adjusters exist is because when a big storm hits, like a hurricane hits in Florida, Allstate and State Farm don't want to have all these adjusters on their payroll. So they just kind of share the adjusters, and then they're just able to deploy a large amount of adjusters to an area without having to give them benefits and keep them on their payroll. So make no mistake, an independent adjuster is no different. They work for the insurance company. The best way to know who somebody works for, and this is just a general rule of thumb, whoever pays that person's paycheck is who that person works for. So public adjuster, the difference is I am paid by the homeowner. So my job is to represent the homeowner. And so you can think of it like a public defendant, like in like a court case type of situation. So I'm here for the public. The public hires me, or people, homeowners, business owners hire me to represent them against the insurance company, because somebody's got to look out for the interest of that homeowner. It's like wild. The insurance companies, with all their marketing and billions of dollars and marketing for trust, they somehow convinced us that they're the best people to tell us how much money they owe us. Like, there's no other situation where you owe me money and I'm like, well, you tell me how much you owe me. Like, no, right? I mean, why are they the ones even doing the valuation of the loss, right? It shouldn't be that way, right? But they convinced us that we're the insurance company is the first one that we should call, that we're in good hands, like a good neighbor. It's all these slogans. They're always advocating for trust, and it's all nonsense.
You saying, man, that Jake, he's not a great neighbor?
Yeah, I am saying that he's one of the worst neighbors, man. It's actually wild. There's a 60-minute special on some whistleblowers from the insurance companies after the hurricanes in Florida. Like, this is real stuff. I'm a little like tin hat insurance conspiracy theory guy, but it's not really tin hat because it's all true. Insurance industry is about half the size of banking. Like, think about how big JP Morgan Chase and Goldman Sachs are. Insurance is $3.5 trillion. They're for-profit. They're publicly traded companies. I can tell you that Allstate's CEO does not care about the roof damage to your house. He cares about fueling up his private jet and getting onto the beach next weekend.
Yeah. 100%. No, and it is kind of amazing, like the crossover there between what you're doing and even that line that you had of like, whoever pays the paycheck is who the person works for, with the and not to derail the conversation too much, but like that's for listeners in my audience, like that's the main reason I set out to do what I do, is because most home buyers have hired a buyer agent to represent them, but then the seller has been the one that's paying the buyer agent. And so there's this weird like conflict of interest in that, wait a second, you're telling me that you're hiring somebody to represent you, but they make more money when you spend more money. They're paid by the seller. The seller is incentivizing them, bribing them sometimes by offering even higher commissions to sell you their house. It's like, there's a real fundamental misalignment. So I think that's a really good thing that you call out, of that, like, hey, the adjuster that's coming out on behalf of the insurance company, like they don't represent your interests. They work for the insurance company, which is why it's so cool what you're doing, where you actually are hired by the homeowner to represent the homeowners and to go to bat for them. Yeah,
100%. And that's, like I said, that's why I like it so much, because you're just helping people navigate through the challenges of the insurance claim world.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that we were kind of talking about this before we hit record, which was that it's difficult to go to bat for somebody when they just straight up don't have the coverage that they need. And so I want to hear more about what are the cases, the coverage where you're seeing people like just stuck because something bad happened and they didn't have what they needed and there's nothing that can be done.
Yeah, I had two that come to mind really quick. I had one, it was a friend. I'm not licensed in California, but people reach out now, like in my network, just and ask for help sometimes. I reviewed his policy. He didn't have personal property coverage. So he had coverage for $0 of the stuff in his house. And this is a guy with a $4 million house in like, oh, shit, escaped me, in a nice place in California. And he's probably got three, four, five, $600,000 of furniture inside the house. Oh, he's in Malibu. Like three, four,
Okay.
$500,000 of furniture in this beautiful house. He makes good money. And I had to break the news and be like, hey, I don't think anybody can do anything with this. I mean, it's because I argue claims with I argue in gray areas and ambiguity, but you can't argue you didn't buy the right coverage, right? That's in the contract. That's clear as day, is you have no coverage for that. And then the other one that I saw was going back to that open perils versus named perils. I had, and this one was more sad. It was actually here in Austin. It was an older couple, and actually the owner of the house is in hospice, which just kind of makes you care a little bit more even. And they owned the house outright, so that's why there was less guardrails around what coverage he needed. Pipe burst in the house, $250,000 of damage. His policy doesn't cover water. Just no water of any type is covered in the policy. It covered
because it was that was a named perils policy, and water wasn't one of the named ones.
Yeah, most of the named perils will just cover like fire and lightning and like a few other things, and like they'll just exclude water. So here you are thinking you have coverage because you think, hey, I pay my premiums, I have an insurance policy, and then when you know the proverbial poo hits the fan, you come to realize, and they don't even send you your policy until you ask for it. They'll just send you like the 5-page declaration form. You'll never even see the full policy unless you request it. So people don't even know what coverage they have right now. Nobody knows because it's such a boring topic. Nobody reads their policy. I would say right now what everybody should do is take your policy, feed it through AI, and just see what buckets of coverage you have or where you might be exposed, especially in your area, because these policies are intentionally confusing to read. They're written by lawyers and these actuaries, and they'll even say things like, we cover this, and then 30 pages later, there's an amendment, and it says, we're amending line 213, and we actually don't cover that. So it's even more confusing to read, and that's why I just say put the policy through AI and see what you get out of it.
Love that suggestion. I've done that with, being in the real estate side, like with HOA and CCNR documents, putting it through and then just asking ChatGPT or whatever a bunch of different questions like, can I park on the street for 24 hours or what's the fine? But I think that would be really smart for listeners, for myself. Like, let's be real here. I need to go download my policy after this conversation and load it up into ChatGPT and then just start asking a whole bunch of questions of like, am I good if a pipe bursts in my wall and I'm away for a week and it just keeps running? Am I good if there's a hailstorm and I get crazy roof damage? How much does the insurance company pay for my roof?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's chaos on the roofs. So most of them are now selling these policies that depreciate, and then the leaks are horrible. Policies will say things like, if the leak has been ongoing for days, weeks, or months, and we don't pay. Half the time, if there's water damage, the problem is people call in, they're like, I have a leak, and it might not be a leak. It could have just happened that day, but they call it a leak. So then the insurance company says, oh, we don't cover leaks, and they'll deny it because you said it was a leak.
Interesting.
Or people will call in and they'll say, my house flooded. But in the insurance world, flood is actually water that comes in from the outside of the house and comes inside. Sometimes they'll just deny claims. They're like, oh, you said it was a flood. And I'm like, no. The pipe burst inside my house. That's covered. But people say the wrong words because they don't know any better. And they'll just automatically have these like predetermined conclusions. It is actually wild. You have to use the right words too when you file a claim.
Yeah. Dude, it's nuts. Probably every homeowner at some point in their lifetime as a homeowner will have to file a claim, right? Like, I don't know if you've got the data on how common it is. Like, it's probably not something that you're having to do like once every 5 years, but I wouldn't be surprised if like once every 10 to 15 years, there's something that goes wrong where you're needing to.
I am the anomaly. I'm on my 4th in 10 years personally. I don't know what it is. I have remodeled this same house 3 times in 5 years. And people are like, oh, you have an insurance claim, you can upgrade your house. I'm like, I bought my house remodeled. The part of my story I skipped is the pipes actually burst when I first bought the house 2 weeks after I bought it. I fixed it up. And then the bigger burst happened when I wasn't home. And then actually just like 3 days ago, I replaced the air conditioning, put a 30,000 nice two units air conditioning. They didn't connect it right, and now I have another insurance claim, but I'm not going through my coverage. I'm going through they already accepted liability. They're like, yeah, we messed up. We didn't glue the drain line properly. They didn't glue it at all, and so now they're paying. It's like another $30,000 of damage in my brand new remodeled house.
That's how you know that you're in the right business, though, is that you're getting all the so many extra experiences that you're just going through yourself so that you can better help your clients.
Yeah, I can't make it up. I can't make this stuff up.
No. Well, yeah, I mean, that's, I love the advice. This is just super, super actionable. How many states are you licensed in?
We're in 5 right now: Texas, New Mexico, DC, Maryland, and Virginia.
Okay.
The state laws vary, but they're not too bad. They're all insurance policies are mostly based off of like the New York standard fire policy. Dude, I'm like an insurance claim nerd though. Like, insurance in America was founded by Benjamin Franklin. He started the Philadelphia conservatorship, and that insurance company is still in business today. There's like it's like cool, fascinating stuff actually, if you get really bored one day.
Dude, the next time I'm down in Austin, we're grabbing dinner and let's just talk insurance. I actually I love geeking out over this stuff. So that's fantastic. For maybe one last question here before kind of getting into how folks can connect with you. But when something goes wrong in your house, we talked about the first call that most people make is to the insurance company. What would you recommend doing? Like if you have a pipe that's burst or something that's gone wrong, what is the first call that you make? What are some of the just best practices for that phone call with the insurance company when you do call them?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Nick. I think the first thing you should do is get your policy. Before you file a claim, you should see if that claim is covered or what the parameters are. Like you mentioned earlier, like what if you're out of town and the pipes burst? Will that be covered? Random aside, most policies will cover that as long as you left the heat on in the house. They even will have a clause saying if you turn off the heat, then we're not covering that. And so people will say, oh yeah, I left the house for a week. I turned off the air conditioning. And they're like, denied. You told us you did the wrong thing. You didn't read your policy. So step one, the first call you should make if you don't already have your policy is call the insurance company. Don't file the claim yet, but get a copy of your full policy. Should be at least 40 to 50 pages long. From there, make sure that what happened to your house is covered. And like I said, these days, feed it through GPT, talk to the PDF is the first thing I would do. Second thing is it doesn't hurt. Every public adjuster and every property damage insurance attorney will or at least should give you a free consultation. Doesn't hurt. Doesn't hurt to talk to somebody. It's like hiring an accountant or hiring any other professional, right? You don't have to use that service, but you might learn something every time you talk to somebody. I will say, and I have to say, you do have to notify the insurance company. Most policies you have there's a section that I love to focus on. It's called Your Duties After a Loss. Usually the first duty in most policy is you have to provide prompt notice to the insurance company. Although, notice the word prompt, it doesn't say you have to call them right away. It doesn't have to say you have to call them within 1 day. Prompt is a vague term. So you do have a duty to, within a reasonable window of time, notify the insurance company, but it doesn't have to be the first, second, or third call. If it's a water claim or a fire claim, you can even call a local water mitigation company and have them come out first too and assess the extent of the damage. But I would say the first thing is read the policy. But also, by the way, I should say the first thing you should do is actually prevent further loss to your property. Every policy that I've seen, you have an obligation to prevent further loss to your property. So that's where the water mitigation, like if you have a burst pipe, you should take steps to immediately prevent further damage to your property. Then you start making the calls.
That's a good qualifier. Because I do think that we have to be honest about, there are some bad actors that they look at a bad situation and then they say, oh, how can I take full advantage of this and try and make it even worse? And that's not what anybody here is advocating for of insurance fraud.
Sure
that that the insurer is held accountable to the full extent that they have promised services to the homeowner as the client.
Yeah, I always tell people it comes down to the principle of indemnification. You're neither supposed to make money or lose money on an insurance claim. You're supposed to just be put back to the way the house was before the loss happened.
Yep. Yeah. This is so good, man. So, Insurance Claim Hero, you've got 5 states that you're licensed in and that your team is available to help folks. What's the best place for people to connect with you?
I basically run like an insurance hate account on Instagram, Insurance Claim Hero, just all one word on Insta. I just post memes. We make memes crapping on insurance companies. Otherwise, if you need help, my website, insuranceclaimhero.org, probably the best way. I will say, even if it's a state we're not licensed in, like I told you at the beginning, I got into this just because I hate insurance companies taking advantage of people. I try to, even if I can't help, I try to give pointers and free advice as much as possible. I find that you help people, you do things for the right reasons, the money will come anyways. So we do a lot of that, right? It's just I tell people sometimes, or some people come in, their claim is too small, and I'm like, hey, I'm not going to make enough money. And I'm honest with you. I'm like, hey, if your claim is like $5,000, I'm not going to make too much money off of it. But this is and I told them exactly what I would do. I give them a few email templates, and I say, hey, you're capable, do it yourself, and I'll coach you through it. It's really just about, you need to get the money that you need, and then you save your money of paying me if you do it yourself anyways.
Right. Dude, I love it. Well, listeners, I will have links to those in the description below. I love the memes, so for nothing else, I'll be following and enjoying those. But I'm really grateful, man, for the work that you're doing, for this gap that you've seen in the industry and the way that you're advocating for consumers. I know that that's got to resonate with the folks that are listening here. So very glad to make the connection. Appreciate you, man. Keep up the good work.
Thank you very much, Nick. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully people are still awake after all this insurance talk.
I think so, man. This is good. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you very much. Take it easy.